When a headline promises that one man has finally admitted what fans always suspected, the natural question is simple. Suspected about what exactly? For nearly 5 decades, two actors shared a bond that outlived the television show that made them famous, survived changing careers, and continued quietly into their final years. Now that one of them is gone, attention has turned to the other, searching for some hidden truth in his grief. But before accepting the premise of a dramatic confession, it helps to look at what has actually been said publicly, by the people who were there, in their own words, across interviews spanning decades. The real story does not need exaggeration. It is already remarkable enough. Randolph Mantooth died on July 9, 2026, at a hospice facility in Ventura, California, at the age of 80. According to his family, the cause was complications from pneumonia following a years-long battle with multiple cancers that began with a throat cancer diagnosis in 2015. His brother Donald told reporters that Mantooth had been declining for some time, growing thinner as the illness progressed, and that he died peacefully, surrounded by loved ones. His sister Tanya later confirmed the specific cause of death. It was the kind of quiet, private ending that so often follows a very public life, and it closed a chapter that began more than 50 years earlier on a soundstage in Los Angeles. To understand why Mantooth's passing struck such a deep chord, it helps to return to January 1972, when NBC introduced a modest mid-season replacement series called Emergency. At the time, the American public had almost no concept of what a paramedic was. Fewer than a dozen paramedic units existed in the entire country, most of them concentrated in Los Angeles County. Jack Webb, the creator behind Dragnet, wanted to bring the same documentary-style realism to the world of firefighting and emergency medicine, and he needed 2 young actors who could convincingly play men doing a job that barely existed yet in the public imagination. He cast Randolph Mantooth as Johnny Gage and Kevin Tighe as Roy DeSoto, partners assigned to the fictional Squad 51 of the Los Angeles County Fire Department. What followed was not just a hit show, but something closer to a genuine cultural shift. Within 3 years of the series premiere, dozens of states had passed legislation permitting paramedics to treat patients directly in the field. Within a decade, more than half of all Americans lived within a short drive of a paramedic unit. Fire service historians have long credited Emergency with helping accelerate that transformation, since it gave lawmakers and the public a vivid, sympathetic picture of what these first responders actually did. Mantooth and Tighe, by simply playing believable, competent, occasionally goofy young men in uniform, had inadvertently helped reshape emergency medicine in America. Both actors took the responsibility seriously enough that they trained with real paramedics to get the details right, and both performed the majority of their own physical stunts throughout the show's 6-season run. What makes the story of these two performers different from so many television partnerships is that the friendship did not end when the cameras stopped rolling in 1977. It deepened. Mantooth once described Tighe as his best friend during a 2013 interview with the Television Academy, reflecting on the years they had spent building something together that neither of them fully expected to matter this much. That closeness was not just sentimental language for an interview. When Mantooth remarried in 2002, he asked Kevin Tighe to stand beside him as his best man. Speaking to USA Today in 2025, Tighe reflected on those early years together, recalling that they had both come from working-class backgrounds and had arrived on their first major show without pretension, simply trying to do the job well. It is a small detail, but it says something about how 2 men who might have drifted apart after a canceled series instead built a decades-long friendship rooted in shared beginnings. That friendship continued to manifest itself in ways that extended well past nostalgia tours or convention appearances. Both men remained genuinely embedded in the world their characters had once only pretended to inhabit. Mantooth became a lifetime member of the National Association of Emergency Medical Technicians and served as a spokesperson for the International Association of Firefighters and the International Association of Fire Chiefs, touring firehouses and EMS conferences across the country for years, sometimes visiting more than 20 cities in 18 states within a single year. He often told audiences of first responders that true care meant more than technical skill, urging them to look up from their equipment and let the people they were helping see their compassion directly. It was advice rooted in something personal. Mantooth had survived carbon monoxide poisoning earlier in his life, and his sister had survived a serious car accident, both times because paramedics and flight nurses intervened. He frequently said he felt he owed a debt to people whose names he never even learned. That sense of debt eventually became the foundation for one of the most meaningful projects of his later career. Mantooth and Tighe served as executive producers together on a documentary titled Into the Unknown, examining the real experiences of paramedics, dispatchers, flight crews, and their families. Actor and former FDNY firefighter Steve Buscemi joined them as a fellow producer, alongside Ren Arthur. The project was not framed as a nostalgic reunion piece trading on their television fame. It was framed as an attempt to tell the truths of modern EMS work that emergency had only begun to hint at in the 1970s, using the platform their old show had given them to elevate voices that rarely got this kind of national attention. For two men in their 70s and 80s, choosing to spend their remaining working years amplifying the stories of real first responders says something quiet but powerful about where their loyalties had settled by the end. So what then, of the idea that Tighe has finally admitted something long suspected? The truth is less about a hidden secret and more about a friendship that was documented consistently, openly, and without controversy for over 50 years. There is no confirmed report of some scandalous private confession following Mantooth's death, no leaked statement, no anonymous insider account. What exists instead is a long quiet paper trail of two men who spoke warmly and consistently about each other across decades of interviews, who worked side by side well into their 70s, and who chose, at the end, to keep telling stories about the profession that had defined their public identities. If anything has been confirmed by the aftermath of Mantooth's passing, it is simply the depth and sincerity of a bond that many casual fans may not have fully appreciated, one that outlasted the show itself by nearly 50 years. The public reaction following Mantooth's death reinforced just how far his influence had reached beyond entertainment circles. Tributes poured in not only from fellow actors but from working paramedics and firefighters, who credited the character of Johnny Gage with inspiring their entire careers. The Los Angeles County Fire Department issued a statement calling Mantooth the face of the department for an entire generation, noting that for fire service veterans of a certain age, the image of Gage riding Squad 51 had become something close to legend. EMS attorney Doug Wolfberg, who had known Mantooth personally for more than 25 years, described him online as a true ambassador for emergency medicine, someone who had used his fame deliberately and consistently to support the profession rather than simply capitalize on it. Soap opera co-stars from his later career, including Lisa Lo-Cicero, also paid emotional tribute, describing him as a formative presence during their early years in the industry. It is worth remembering, too, that Mantooth's life outside of emergency was its own long and varied story. Born Randy DeRoy Mantooth in Sacramento in 1945, the son of a father with Cherokee and Seminole heritage, he grew up moving frequently as his family followed pipeline construction work across nearly 24 states. That instability, he later suggested, shaped him in ways that lingered well into adulthood, making the kind of lasting friendships he eventually built with people like Kevin Tighe feel especially significant. After his breakout role, he built a second career in daytime television, spending nearly a decade on the ABC soap Loving and its successor The City, along with stints on General Hospital, As the World Turns, and One Life to Live. Across 5 decades in the industry, he remained, in his own telling, someone who valued steady collaboration and mutual respect over the fleeting attention of stardom. In the end, the question posed by dramatic headlines asking what Kevin Tighe has finally admitted may be less interesting than the answer that was already sitting in plain view. Two men, cast together as fictional partners in 1972, built something that television rarely produces, a friendship sustained by genuine mutual respect, carried through decades of separate careers, punctuated by moments like a wedding invitation to serve as best man, and ultimately channeled into shared work meant to honor the real people their characters were based on. There was no scandal to uncover, no long-buried secret waiting to surface after a death. What there was, instead, was simply loyalty, sustained quietly and without fanfare for more than 50 years. Perhaps that is the more meaningful story after all, one that says less about hidden suspicions finally confirmed and more about how rare it is for two people to remain each other's constant across an entire lifetime spent largely in the public eye. As tributes continue to arrive from firefighters, paramedics, and fellow performers.